Have you ever wondered how far a person must go to confront their own prejudices and seek redemption? This is the story of Officer Adam Connors, a man forced to face the consequences of his actions in a community unlike any he has known. Stay with us as we uncover his journey of transformation, one mistake at a time. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Brighton Prep as Officer Adam Connors pulled his patrol car to a stop. In the back seat, his son Evan clutched his superhero lunchbox, practically bouncing with excitement. "Have a great day, buddy," Adam said, glancing at him through the rearview mirror. "And remember what we talked about. Be kind to everyone, okay?" "Yes, Dad," Evan replied, grinning wide enough to show his missing front tooth. He scrambled out of the car and joined the flow of uniformed students heading toward the school's grand oak doors. Adam waited until Evan disappeared inside before pulling out his phone and dialing home. Drumming his fingers on the steering wheel, he listened as the line rang. "Hey, honey," he said when Lily answered. "I just dropped Evan off. Listen, I might be late tonight. There's a neighborhood watch meeting I need to attend." "Okay," Lily replied warmly. "Be safe out there. I'll keep dinner warm for you. Love you." "Love you too," Adam said, smiling to himself. 20 minutes later, as Adam patrolled the quiet streets near the school, his eyes locked onto a woman and a young girl walking along the sidewalk. They were dressed in the distinct navy blue blazers of Brighton Prep, but something about them didn't sit right with him. Their skin was darker than most of the students he usually saw at the school, and their movements seemed cautious, deliberate. Adam slowed his patrol car, suspicion flaring. He flipped on the lights and pulled up beside them. The woman and her daughter stopped walking, their expressions carefully neutral as they turned to face him. "ID cards, please," Adam barked, stepping out of the car. His voice carried a sharp edge. The woman reached into her handbag with measured calm, pulling out her wallet. "I'm Angela Harris," she said evenly. "This is my daughter, Clara. We're with Brighton Prep." Adam's gaze hardened, scrutinizing them. "You forgot your IDs?" he asked, his tone heavy with disbelief. "Or are you lying?" Angela met his gaze directly. "We must have left them at home," she said, her voice steady. "If needed, my husband, Daniel, can verify our enrollment." Adam stepped closer, his voice lowering to a near snarl. "Listen here, ma'am. People don't just stroll into a place like Brighton Prep unless they belong. You think I'm going to believe you and your daughter do?" Angela stood tall, her posture calm despite the tension radiating from her. "Officer, I don't see what we've done to warrant this kind of treatment," she said evenly. "Get in the car," Adam ordered, gesturing toward the back of his patrol vehicle. "We'll figure this out at the station." Without further argument, Angela and Clara complied, their shoulders stiff as they climbed into the back seat. Adam slammed the door behind them, muttering under his breath about teaching lessons. As he drove toward the station, the tension inside the car was palpable. Angela sat close to her daughter, her hands resting protectively on Clara's lap. The girl stared straight ahead, her expression blank, but her eyes glimmering with barely concealed emotion. "You're awfully quiet back there," Adam sneered, glancing at them through the rearview mirror. "Got nothing to say for yourselves?" Neither of them responded. Instead, Angela gave her daughter a brief, knowing look, a silent communication that only deepened Adam's irritation. The uneasy silence was broken by the sudden buzz of Adam's phone. "Captain Price speaking," came the voice on the other end when Adam answered. "Sir, I'm bringing in 2 individuals from Brighton Prep, a woman and her daughter," Adam reported, his voice filled with misplaced confidence. There was a long pause. Then the captain's voice returned, sharp and cutting. "Do you have any idea who they are, Connors?" Adam frowned, glancing in the mirror at Angela and Clara. "No, sir. Why?" "That's Angela Harris and her daughter, Clara," Price said, his voice now seething. "They're the wife and daughter of Daniel Harris, the district attorney. Pull over, let them go immediately, and get to Harris's office. He's waiting for you." Adam's stomach dropped. Daniel Harris was one of the most powerful legal figures in the city, someone who could ruin Adam's career with a single phone call. Beads of sweat broke out on Adam's forehead as he stammered, "Yes, sir." "Understood." Pulling the patrol car to the curb, Adam got out and opened the back door, his hands trembling slightly. "There's been a mistake," he mumbled. "You're free to go." Angela stepped out gracefully, her composure unshaken, and offered her daughter a steadying hand as she followed. Angela looked at Adam one last time, her gaze cool but piercing, before they walked away toward a black car that had pulled up behind them. Adam stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching the car drive off. The weight of his error pressed down on him like a heavy stone. For the first time, he felt the chill of his own prejudice and the error. Adam sat in Captain Price's office, his hands folded tightly in his lap, trying to keep his breathing steady. The captain's expression was grim, his arms crossed as he leaned against the desk. Behind him, a large window framed the city skyline, but the view offered no comfort. "You've really outdone yourself this time, Connors," Price began, his voice low and biting. "Do you have any idea how much damage you've caused?" Adam opened his mouth to respond, but Price held up a hand to silence him. "No, don't answer that. Let me spell it out for you. You profiled and detained Angela Harris and her daughter without cause. Do you know who Daniel Harris is? Of course you do. He's the district attorney, the man who has enough clout to make or break this entire precinct." "I didn't know," Adam started, but Price's glare cut him off. "You didn't bother to find out. You saw a black woman and her daughter and assumed they didn't belong. That's the problem, Connors. Your assumptions, your prejudice." Adam's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, feeling the full weight of Price's words. After a tense pause, Price sighed and sank into his chair, running a hand through his graying hair. "Here's the deal. Harris has decided not to pursue formal charges, for now. But he made it clear he wants you out of this precinct. Effective immediately, you're being transferred to the 9th District in Oakwood." Adam's stomach dropped. The 9th District, a predominantly black community, 3 hours away from the suburban comfort he was used to. It wasn't just a reassignment, it was exile. "Sir, with all due respect, my family," Adam began, his voice tinged with desperation. "This isn't up for negotiation," Price interrupted. "It's this, or your badge. Take it or leave it." Adam slumped back in his chair, his thoughts racing. He pictured Lily and Evan, their cozy home, their routines. Would they uproot everything to follow him? And if not, how could he bear being separated from them? "Sometimes, distance from those we love is necessary to become better for them later," Price said, his tone softening slightly. Adam left the office with a hollow feeling in his chest. That evening, he packed his bags in silence, the echoes of Price's words haunting him. Lily watched from the doorway, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't deserve this." "I made a mistake, Lily," Adam replied, his voice heavy with regret. "I have to take responsibility." Evan appeared in the doorway, clutching his favorite superhero toy. "Are you leaving, Dad?" he asked, his voice small. Adam crouched down to his son's level, pulling him into a tight hug. "Just for a little while, buddy. 6 months. I'll call you every day. Twice a day, even." Tears brimmed in Lily's eyes as she knelt beside them. "We'll be here, Adam, waiting for you." Early the next morning, Adam drove out of the city, the sight of his home disappearing in the rearview mirror. The farther he went, the more the landscape changed, the suburban neighborhoods giving way to older buildings with faded paint and cracked sidewalks. When he arrived at the 9th District Precinct, the air was different, thicker, heavier. The building was smaller and more worn than what he was used to. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Conversations hushed as Adam walked through the bullpen, the weight of judgmental stares following him. The captain of the precinct, a sharp-eyed woman named Captain Martinez, greeted him with a curt nod. "Officer Connors," she said, motioning him into her office. Beside her stood a tall, broad-shouldered black man with graying temples. His presence was commanding, his gaze steady. "This is Officer Thomas King," Martinez said. "He's one of our most respected officers, and he'll be your partner and mentor during your time here." King didn't extend a hand. Instead, he studied Adam with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably. "Welcome to the 9th, King said, his voice deep and calm. "We'll see if you're ready for what this community has to teach you." Later that day, Adam joined King on a patrol through the neighborhood. The streets were alive with activity. Children playing on the sidewalks, vendors selling produce, families chatting on stoops. But when Adam passed, the energy shifted. People turned away, crossed the street, or stared at him with open distrust. At a local coffee shop, the owner handed King his usual order with a warm smile, but barely acknowledged Adam. Outside, a group of teenagers muttered to each other before crossing the street to avoid walking near them. "They know who you are," King said, his tone matter-of-fact. "Word travels fast here. Every move you make will be watched and remembered." Adam nodded stiffly, his jaw tightening as the reality of his situation sank in. This wasn't just a reassignment. It was a test, a chance to prove he could be better, or a final opportunity to fail completely. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the neighborhood, Adam realized that his new beginning wasn't going to be easy. The road ahead was steep, and every step would demand more than he'd ever given before. The morning air was crisp as Adam began his patrol with Officer King. The streets of Oakwood were busier than before. Shop owners sweeping their stoops, children playing hopscotch on the sidewalks, and families setting up outdoor tables for an upcoming neighborhood event. Despite the activity, Adam still felt the weight of wary eyes following him wherever he went. At every stop, it was the same. People greeted King with warmth, offering him coffee or chatting about their families. But when they turned to Adam, their smiles faded, replaced by curt nods or quiet avoidance. The message was clear. Adam wasn't welcome here. At a local bakery, Mrs. Foster, the elderly owner, greeted King with a plate of freshly baked sweet potato pie. When Adam reached for a piece, she pulled the tray back slightly, her expression polite but distant. "Maybe next time," she said, turning to King. Adam swallowed his frustration and nodded, forcing himself to smile. Outside, King leaned against their patrol car, watching Adam's tight posture. "This isn't about you right now, Connors," King said after a long silence. "These folks have every right to be cautious." "I'm trying," Adam said, his voice laced with frustration. "But no one's giving me a chance." "Why should they?" King asked, his gaze steady. "What have you done to earn it?" The question lingered in the air, heavy and unanswerable. Adam knew King was right. His presence here was a reminder of the distrust the community had for people in uniform, distrust he had contributed to with his own actions. That evening, Adam found himself walking past the community center. Laughter and music spilled out through the open doors. Curious, he stepped inside and saw a group of teenagers setting up tables for a bingo night. At the center of the activity was Clara Harris, the daughter of Angela Harris, the woman he had wrongfully detained. She was arranging chairs with two younger kids, her demeanor calm but focused. Adam hesitated, wondering if he should leave before she noticed him. But it was too late. Clara glanced up, her expression freezing briefly before she returned to her task. "Need help?" Adam asked awkwardly, stepping closer. Clara paused, clearly debating whether to respond. Finally, she gestured toward a stack of chairs. "If you want." Adam got to work, moving the chairs into neat rows alongside the teenagers. The room buzzed with chatter, but he felt the tension whenever someone glanced his way. Still, he kept working, determined not to let the unease stop him. After an hour, the setup was complete. Clara handed out bingo cards to the participants, most of whom were older residents. Adam watched from the sidelines, unsure of his place. To his surprise, Clara walked over and handed him a card. "You should play," she said simply. Adam blinked, caught off guard. Sure, thanks." He took a seat near the back and listened as the numbers were called out. The room filled with laughter and playful groans as players teased each other over missed chances. Slowly, the atmosphere began to shift. A few people nodded at Adam, even offering small smiles. As the night wound down, Clara approached him again. "Why'd you stay?" she asked, her tone curious but not unkind. "I guess I just wanted to help," Adam said, shrugging. "I know I've got a lot to make up for." Clara studied him for a moment before nodding. "Actions matter more than words," she said. "You'll figure that out if you keep showing up." Adam left the community center feeling something he hadn't felt in weeks: hope. The evening had been a small step, but it was a step nonetheless. The next morning, Adam joined a neighborhood cleanup effort King had mentioned. Volunteers gathered with gloves, trash bags, and paint supplies, ready to revitalize the streets. Adam worked side by side with residents, scrubbing graffiti off walls and planting flowers in neglected garden beds. At first, no one spoke to him, but as the day wore on, conversations began to flow. A man shared tips on how to clean stubborn paint stains, and a teenager asked Adam to help move a heavy planter. By the time the cleanup ended, Adam had shaken hands with more people than he could count. As the volunteers gathered for a group photo, Adam stood among them, smiling for the first time in weeks. For the first time, he felt like he belonged. Later that evening, Adam walked past Mrs. Foster's bakery. To his surprise, she waved him inside. "You've been busy today," she said, sliding a slice of pie across the counter. "On the house." Adam thanked her, his heart swelling with gratitude. The simple gesture felt like a bridge being built, a sign that trust, however fragile, could be earned. That night, as Adam sat in his small apartment, he thought about the day. For the first time, he realized that Oakwood wasn't just a place he'd been sent to as punishment. It was a community full of resilience, strength, and kindness. And if he could learn to truly see it, maybe he could find a way to make amends, not just to them, but to himself. The night was quiet as Adam sat at his desk in the small apartment, staring at his phone. The screen was dark, but his thoughts were loud. He had spent weeks working alongside Oakwood residents, attending community events, and doing his best to earn trust. But the weight of his earlier actions still hung heavily over him. He couldn't stop thinking about Angela Harris and her daughter, Clara. Their dignified silence during that traffic stop haunted him more than any angry words could have. And the fact that Clara had welcomed him, even slightly, during the bingo night left him feeling both hopeful and ashamed. He knew he needed to face them directly, to apologize properly, not just for detaining them, but for the prejudice that had driven his actions. The opportunity came unexpectedly. During a patrol the next day, Adam and Officer King responded to a call at a nearby park. A teenager had been spotted tagging graffiti on a playground wall. When they arrived, they found Clara and a group of young kids running an after-school program. Clara was standing protectively in front of the teenager, her arms crossed, facing off against a man who had called in the report. "You can't treat him like a criminal," Clara was saying firmly. "He's a kid. He made a mistake. Let him clean it up." The man, a middle-aged store owner, folded his arms. "Mistakes like that cost money. Who's going to pay for it?" "I'll handle it," Clara said without hesitation. Adam stepped forward, his presence drawing immediate attention. Clara's eyes flicked to him, and for a moment her expression betrayed surprise, but it quickly turned neutral. Adam glanced at the teenager, who looked terrified, and then back at Clara. "I'll help too," Adam said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, but he pressed on. "If he cleans it up, there's no need to take this further." The store owner hesitated, his gaze moving between Adam and Clara before he finally nodded. "Fine, but I don't want to see him here again." Clara let out a small breath of relief, then turned to the teenager. "You're lucky," she said, her tone firm but kind. "Next time, think before you act." The boy nodded quickly, grabbing a rag and a bucket of water from Clara's supplies. As he scrubbed the wall, Clara turned to Adam. "Why are you here?" she asked bluntly. Adam took a deep breath. "I came to apologize." Her eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't interrupt. "I was wrong. About you. About your mother. About everything," Adam said, his words spilling out faster than he intended. "I treated you like you didn't belong, and I had no right to do that. You didn't deserve it." Clara crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "No, we didn't." Adam nodded, accepting the weight of her words. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I haven't earned it. But I want you to know I'm trying to be better." Clara studied him for a long moment. "Words are easy, Officer Connors. It's your actions that matter." "I know," Adam said quietly. "That's why I'm here." Clara's gaze softened slightly, but she didn't respond. Instead, she turned her attention back to the teenager, offering him quiet encouragement as he worked to clean the graffiti. Later that evening, Adam couldn't stop replaying the conversation in his mind. Clara's words echoed in his head. "It's your actions that matter." He realized she wasn't just talking about him, she was challenging him to prove that he was capable of more than empty apologies. The next few weeks became a blur of effort. Adam threw himself into every opportunity to connect with the community. He volunteered at the youth center, coached basketball games, and even helped with the weekly bingo nights. Slowly, he began to see the barriers between him and the residents of Oakwood start to crack, if not completely fall. One evening, as Adam was walking home, his phone buzzed. It was Evan, his son. "Hey, Dad," Evan's cheerful voice came through. "Guess what? I got an A on my science project." "That's amazing, buddy," Adam said, smiling. But as Evan continued to chatter, Adam's thoughts drifted back to Angela and Clara. He wondered if Evan would understand what had happened, if he could explain to his son how much he had changed, or how much further he still had to go. The opportunity for true redemption came sooner than expected. One afternoon, while patrolling near Clara's school, Adam noticed a black van idling near the curb. His instincts kicked in immediately. Something felt wrong. Moments later, he saw Clara and Angela leaving the school together, laughing as they walked toward their car. The van's engine revved, and two masked men jumped out, rushing toward them. Adam didn't think. He acted. He shouted for backup into his radio and sprinted toward the scene. The men grabbed Angela and Clara, forcing them toward the van. Clara struggled fiercely, and Angela shouted for help, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Let them go!" Adam roared, drawing his weapon. The men hesitated, caught off guard by his sudden appearance. One of them reached into his jacket, and Adam fired a warning shot into the air. The sound echoed, freezing everyone in place. Backup arrived moments later, sirens wailing as patrol cars surrounded the scene. The kidnappers were subdued and handcuffed, and Angela and Clara were safely pulled away from the van. Angela clung to her daughter, tears streaming down her face as she thanked the officers. Adam stood at a distance, his heart pounding as the adrenaline began to fade. Angela's eyes met his, and for the first time, her expression wasn't one of cold anger or indifference. It was gratitude. That night, Adam sat alone in his apartment, the events of the day replaying in his mind. He realized that his actions had finally spoken louder than his words, but he also knew this was only one step on a much longer journey. The precinct buzzed with activity the next morning as officers processed the paperwork from the attempted kidnapping. Adam sat quietly at his desk, replaying the scene in his mind. The fear in Angela and Clara's faces, the chaos of the struggle. It all felt like a stark reminder of how easily lives could be upended. "Connors," a voice called, breaking through his thoughts. Adam looked up to see Captain Martinez standing in the doorway. "You've got a visitor." Adam's stomach twisted. He stood, following her gaze to the lobby, where Angela and Clara waited. Angela's posture was as composed as ever, but Clara seemed uneasy, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Officer Connors," Angela said, as he approached, her tone neutral but firm. "We need to talk." Adam nodded, leading them to a quiet corner of the precinct. "I'm glad you're both okay," he began, his voice careful. "Yesterday could have ended very differently." Angela tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Yes, it could have. And we have you to thank for stepping in." Adam shifted uncomfortably. "I was just doing my job." Angela's gaze didn't waver. "Was it just your job? Or was it something more?" Adam hesitated, then sighed. "It was more. I couldn't stand by and let something happen to you, to either of you. Not after everything I've done." Clara finally spoke, her voice quieter than her mother's, but no less steady. "Why now? Why do you care now?" Adam met her eyes, the weight of her question pressing down on him. "Because I've seen what kind of person I was, and I hated it. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I'm trying to change." Angela exchanged a glance with her daughter, something unspoken passing between them. "Change takes time," Angela said finally, "and trust takes even longer. But yesterday was a step in the right direction." Adam felt a flicker of hope at her words, though he didn't let it show too much. "Thank you. That means more than you know." As Angela and Clara left, Adam watched them go, a sense of relief washing over him. It wasn't absolution, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, Adam threw himself into his work with renewed purpose. He attended every community event, from senior center bingo nights to youth basketball games at the rec center. He volunteered for the neighborhood cleanup crew, painted over graffiti, and helped repair run-down playground equipment. Slowly but surely, the walls between him and the residents of Oakwood began to come down. Mrs. Foster, the bakery owner who had once withheld her sweet potato pie from him, now greeted him warmly every morning with a slice on the house. The teenagers who had once crossed the street to avoid him now nodded in acknowledgement. And Angela Harris, though still cautious, started to offer small smiles when their paths crossed. The true test came on a quiet Saturday morning. Adam was patrolling near the community garden when a group of teenagers flagged him down. "Officer Connors!" one of them called. "Can you help us out?" They were trying to move a heavy planter filled with soil, but it was too much for them to handle alone. Adam joined in, his strength tipping the balance as they shifted the planter into place. When they finished, one of the teens, Jaden, a boy Adam had once dismissed as trouble, grinned. "Not bad, officer." Adam chuckled, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Not bad yourself." From that day on, Adam noticed more people greeting him, more nods of recognition, and even a few genuine smiles. Slowly, he felt himself becoming part of the fabric of the community, not as an outsider or an enforcer, but as someone who cared. One evening, as Adam returned home, his phone buzzed with a video call. It was Evan, his son. "Dad!" Evan's face lit up the screen. "Guess what? I made the soccer team." "That's amazing, buddy," Adam said, his chest swelling with pride. "I'm so proud of you." "When are you coming home?" Evan asked, his voice quieter now. "Soon," Adam promised. "Just a few more months." After the call ended, Adam sat in the quiet of his apartment, reflecting on how far he had come. The man who had arrived in Oakwood was not the same man sitting here now. He had learned the value of humility, of listening, and of seeing people for who they truly were, not for the assumptions he carried. The final step of his journey came on his last day in Oakwood. The community had organized a farewell gathering at the park, complete with music, food, and speeches. Adam stood awkwardly near the edge of the crowd, unsure of how to accept the kindness being shown to him. Angela Harris was the first to approach. She handed him a plate of food and smiled. "You've done good work here, Officer Connors. Don't stop." Clara joined her mother, offering Adam a nod. "Actions matter more than words," she said. "You've proven that." As the night wore on, Adam found himself surrounded by laughter and warmth. For the first time, he felt a sense of belonging, not just to a community, but to a purpose greater than himself. When he returned to his family, Evan ran into his arms, and Lily smiled through tears. "You're different," she said simply. "I am," Adam replied, "and I want to keep getting better." Oakwood had changed him, but more importantly, it had shown him the man he could be. And as he sat with his family that evening, he felt a quiet peace settle over him, the kind that only comes from knowing you've earned a second chance. What did you think of Adam's journey? Have you ever witnessed or experienced such a transformation in yourself or others? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one.